Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm also the host of Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight, and I'm the editor of the anthology, which you should run out and buy, called Moms Don't Have Time to, a Quarantine Anthology. All proceeds of that book go to COVID-19 vaccine research. And I'm the editor-in-chief of Moms Don't Have Time to Write, a new publication on Medium, and we're accepting submissions, so please send your personal essays there. And if all that isn't enough, you can follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and my website is zibbyowens.com. Okay, now back to this amazing podcast. Mandy Gonzalez is the author of Fearless. She has thrilled audiences on Broadway, lit up the screen on television, been published in Harvard Business Review, and started a social movement. Currently starring as Angelica Schuyler in Hamilton on Broadway. She also recently appeared in Madam Secretary as recurring character Lucy Knox and is known for originating the role of Nina Rosario in the Tony Award-winning show In the Heights. Mandy's debut album, Fearless, reached number 13 on the iTunes pop charts. Mandy's also an author, having published a widely cited article in the Harvard Business Review on how to overcome one's fear of public speaking. Most dear to her heart, Mandy is the proud founder of #FearlessSquad, a social media movement for inclusiveness and belonging. The movement connects millions of people around the world, encouraging them to be their best selves and helps them empower each other. Welcome, Mandy. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Fearless.
Thanks, Zibby. It's wonderful to be here.
What a treat. So could you please tell listeners what Fearless is about and what inspired you to write this novel?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fearless follows the character Monica Garcia, a talented seventh grader who loves to sing and dreams of a life on Broadway. And along with her abuelita, we follow their journey from a small town in California to opening night on Broadway. And along the way, Monica meets her Fearless Squad. And together they learn that anything and everything is possible, especially on Broadway. And it's just so much fun and such a great adventure. I like to call it a little bit of a Broadway adventure because it definitely is a love letter to Broadway. Because I, like Monica Garcia, had a deep love of music. And I also dreamed of living a life of working on Broadway from a very, very young age. And I was really lucky because I had a grandma who loved musicals. And so we would listen to old cast albums on records. Remember those?
Yes, I do.
And we would watch Broadway Broadway movie musicals together. And I really just fell in love with these incredible stories, but also these like belty torch singers. So one of my favorite singers from the time that I can remember that I was about like 6 was Ethel Merman and Judy Garland, Edie Gourmet. I mean, these are the people I listened to with my grandma. And so it only felt right that when I was creating this theater on Broadway, that I titled the theater the Ethel Merman Theater, because I feel like she is a performer who gave her entire life to Broadway and she deserves her own theater. So I was like, there's no theater for her, so I'm going to make it. And so really that was my inspiration in creating the story, trying to create a story for someone like me that was in middle school that didn't have an arts program, but had this love of musical theater and didn't have like a squad to find where I could express that, you know? And listening to these old albums and watching these movie musicals, I was constantly looking for names and characters that look like me. And I did not have a lot of luck in that. And so it was important for me to write this story and to create stories so that kids can see themselves in the arts, to know that a life in the arts is possible. And it's full of things that you could never imagine, like superstitions and traditions and all of these things that I felt made it feel like home for me. So I hope that when these young readers and, you know, any age read it, that they feel like, oh, Broadway is a place for me too. Like that's somewhere I want to go. And now that Broadway is kind of reopening, I hope that when they read it and they come to Broadway or they go to a theater in their town, they start looking around going, is there a ghost in here? Or what was that? Did that door move by itself? And because really that's what it is, you know? And when I was a kid and I would go camping with my parents because I'm from California, and we'd go to Yosemite every year in the summer. And my dad would tell ghost stories, and people would be like, "Oh, it's so great, campfire stories." Like my dad would tell stories like La Llorona, like the woman in the lake that haunted her children, and so I was fascinated by those kind of stories because that's what I grew up with. And then I got to Broadway, and it was like, oh, there's a ghost in the theater and a ghost light, and if you don't touch this on opening night, the whole show could be ruined. And I was like, this is like exactly what my family's like, So I felt like the two worlds totally met when I got to Broadway or when I started working in the theater.
That's amazing. What an inspiring story. And by the way, you are so fun to listen to and watch. And like, you can just tell you're in the right place being in front of an audience because
thanks.
Is so captivating about you and how you talk and present. Anyway, it's really cool to watch.
Thanks, Zibby.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, wait. So you're living in California, you're vacationing in Yosemite and hearing ghost stories. Next thing you know, you're like in Hamilton. How did that happen with no arts program? Okay, like I've listened to plenty of records of show tunes, and my mom dragged me to lots of took me to many places, some against my will, I will say. But anyway, but I'm not going to be a Broadway performer. There's like no hope. So how did you, aside from your immense talent, make that leap? How did you do that?
Well, you sound a lot like my sister and my brother, who also listened to those show tunes with my grandma and were like, whatever. Like my sister's like, I'm just going to listen to The Cure and Duran Duran. Like, I don't need this. But I was the only grandchild that sang back to those records. And I had a grandma who saw a talent in me and was like, Robin, because both of my parents work full time. I was babysat by my grandma a lot, and I'm the youngest of three. And so I spent a lot of time with her, and she would listen to me and she's like, Robin, to my mom, Mandy's too loud. Like, she's going to hurt herself. We have to put her into lessons. And we had no idea what we were doing. Like, I don't come from a showbiz family. My grandma lived in the Valley and Tarzana. And so there was this dinner theater that was down the street for my grandma. And we would go to that dinner theater, and it was one of those places where you could have an all-you-can-eat buffet and then go see a show.
Perfect.
And so it was great. And it had all-you-can-eat pickles. So I love pickles. And so does my brother. So my brother would have to come too. Like I said, like my poor brother, he's totally an inspiration. My sister's name is Monica. So she was an inspiration for this character. And then my brother got really jealous that my sister was in the book. So then I made the character in the musical Tony for my brother. So they're both in the book, which is very exciting. But anyway, so I would go to this dinner theater with my grandma, and my grandma would just go up to people like after the show. And she went up to this one woman and she's like, my granddaughter has talent. My grandma never spoke like that, but I'm just making her like that. But she's like, she has talent and I have to get her into lessons. Do you teach lessons? And this woman was like, yeah, I'll teach lessons. We saw the Man of La Mancha. And so my grandma started driving me. She would show up with a box of donuts in the morning to pick me up and leave them with my family and then take me for the day. And we would go and do singing lessons. She also found this performing group that I could be a part of that was like a kids performing group in LA. And it was where I met other kids that liked what I did, like the same things as me. And I loved it. And we performed in malls. I was like Tiffany, and we performed in the malls, and we did I think I performed like Smooth Criminal. We did all these like songs from like the 80s and 90s. We were called Rock Theater because we did rock and theater. So it's pretty great. Pretty great. And then, I went to high school. I really wanted to be a cheerleader. I didn't make the tryouts, and I was devastated, and I was crying at home. And my sister was like, Mandy, you're so dramatic. Why don't you join the drama club? And I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, okay. And so I joined the drama club, and that's where I really started to perform with my peers, like people that definitely were the same age. Because in rock theater, there were a lot of kids that were older than me that were already in high school, and I was like a kid. And so in high school, we did, South Pacific, West Side Story, all of those kind of things. And I continued to take lessons outside of school. And my singing teacher at the time told me about this Broadway theater camp in Florida. And it was run by Anne Rankin, and Gregory Hines was going to be one of the teachers, Treat Williams. And I got a full scholarship, and I went to that camp. And it changed my life because it was with kids from all over the country that were the best, and that's what I learned. I learned that it's very important for you when you're in a room to not be the best so that you can grow and learn and get better. And that's when I really was like, so I guess I was about 15 when I'm like, this is what I want to do for a living. And I can, like, I see a path for myself. And so that became my trajectory. And I continued doing high school theater. I did a show at a community theater. And then I wasn't ready to leave. I was very close to my family, similar to Monica Garcia. I didn't want to leave my parents. And so I stayed and I went to CalArts, which was in my hometown. And then I heard about an audition for backup singers for Bette Midler, that she was doing a new show. And that was my freshman year. And I went to that open call and I got the job. And I left school, and that's when my professional life kind of began. And I left my home. I thought that I would be the kid, because I was afraid of things. Like, I thought I would be the kid that would always stay home and close to my parents. And I ended up being the one that lives like the furthest away for the longest time. But, when I was with Bette, we came to New York, and she was so great to us. She put us up at the Plaza when it was still a hotel.
Yeah.
And, like now it's like condos and all that kind of stuff. And I stayed we stayed here for like 2 weeks because we played like the whole tri-state area. And I fell in love with New York. And I was like, this is where I want to go. And so I saved my money from that tour. And then I moved here. And I never stayed at the Plaza Hotel again. I moved to Brooklyn.
Did you take a subway and like come out the way your character did in the book? How like she was like taking the train and rumbling around and then opening up into New York with these wide eyes and,
yes, absolutely. And I love that. And that's what I wanted the reader to feel, because when I arrived, I really kind of came out in Times Square with my suitcase and I was like, this is it. I made it, and nobody in my family, I guess now because I live in Jersey, my parents will take an Uber or Lyft. I mean, there wasn't anything like that, but nobody was going to spend money on a cab from JFK to Manhattan. Like, it was like, well, you could take the subway, so we'll just do that. And so that really was something that I did often when my parents would come to visit, when I was coming out for the first time. But when you see Times Square for the first time, and anybody, but if you're somebody that has been dreaming about it your whole life, it's just this magical place. It still is. Like when I get out, and right now it's so weird because things are boarded up, and that's so weird. But somehow the naked cowboy is still there, like in Times Square, like playing. And I'm like, well, if he's doing it, we'll come back for sure, But it is this magical place. And when I first came, it was like the cup of noodles and all these different billboards. And now it's so different because there's all these TV screens and, but it's so visually exhausting. Like as somebody that's first coming in, it's just like it overwhelms you, and in a great way for me.
Yeah, for me, I like grab the person closest and like try to hide my eyes and get out of there. It's like
I know my husband's the same way.
It's like too much sensory stimulation or something.
I know.
My husband there, he hadn't been in a while, and he was just like, "We're in the belly of the beast."
It's so true. It's so true. But when you work there, there's something about skipping around the crowds and knowing how to get to where you need to go. There's something kind of thrilling about that, but also like, like I know where to go and I know like the secret way and, where to get a bagel and then get to my show. Like, it's kind of nice.
It's like your college campus, right?
It is. It is.
It's like coming to visit and like gets trampled, right? And you're just like dashing from class to class, like get out of my way.
Totally.
Wow. Times Square as campus quad.
Yes, absolutely. But now, it's so crazy because they have those benches, yes, right where the TKTS is. And you can go and like sit and relax. Like when I came, it was like, no, you stand in line for those cheap tickets and, or else you stand in New York. There's no place to go to the bathroom. I found my places, but it's like, no, like you got to stand and walk. That's what it is.
Yes. Not very welcoming at first.
Yeah.
So, like you figure it out or you get out of here. That's
exactly.
Yes.
Elbows out.
So you sort of conquer this whole world and
Mhm.
keep rising and getting all these great parts and everything else. And now, on top of all that success, you delve into the world of, fiction for middle grade people and then like knock the cover off the ball for that too. Like, what else
Aw.
are you not going to do here? This is like, you're getting in everybody's space. Like,
I know. Well, I think that I've always been, I guess, like, is it what, like an outlier? Like, I've always been somebody to kind of be I've always been a little bit of a loner in some ways and always been one that's had to carve my own way. And I've always been one to try. So, and fail a lot. Like I fall a lot and then I get back up and I go, okay, well, let me try this. Let me try that. And I've always been just somebody that's had a creative mind, and my husband is a painter. He shows at Miles McEnery Gallery. He's an abstract painter. And so I'm constantly surrounded by creativity and it inspires me. And his work also inspires me because we met at CalArts. So that's one of the best things to come out of that school experience for me, aside from the things that I did learn, but that I met my husband and that we've been together all this time. But to see his work from the beginning, when he was in grad school at CalArts to now, it's constantly evolved and changed. And I think that we as artists can constantly evolve and change. It's only a matter of putting yourself into a box that people think that you should be in that makes you go, well, that can make you pause and say, well, I shouldn't do that because of this. There's so many becauses and reasons you shouldn't do things, but there's also so many reasons you should. And when you do, it just expands, it expands everything as an artist and makes you, I guess, see a lot further than you ever thought you could go. So that's been like my life. And I think coming from where I come from, seeing, my grandparents who came from Mexico with nothing and, that immigrant like lifestyle and seeing, hey, you can go as far as you want to go, and that there were people that made so many sacrifices before you so that you can, so that's always just kind of with me. And I'm just kind of like, okay, this is right now my path. And I feel lucky because it's part of a series. And so right now I'm working on book 2, which feels so weird talking about book 1, but that's something that I've learned about the literary world. It's very much like, okay, and now we're going on.
How many are in the series? Like
right now I'm signed for 2. So, this next book follows the Fearless Squad. Monica Garcia will also be a big part of this book, but it follows the story of Relly Morton, who grew up in Harlem, and he is based and inspired by my dear friend, Darrell Grand Moultrie, who I met during my first show on Broadway, Aida, when I was the understudy for Idina Menzel. And I didn't know that when you're an understudy or a swing is somebody who covers like 5 to 6 roles in the ensemble. An understudy covers 1 role, like I covered Idina, but you're all in the same dressing room. They put you all in the same dressing room, boys and girls, it doesn't matter. And I shared a mirror with Darrell. And anytime somebody would say something shady, we would like look at each other and be like, did you just hear that? Blah, 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 blah. And we became best friends. And he has been my best friend for 20 years. And similar to all of us as artists, he has been a performer, but now he is a choreographer. And he choreographs all over the world. But right now he's working on a piece for Alvin Ailey and I think New York City Ballet, but he's incredible. And so it was really important for me to make this second book, follow his journey, in this world.
And how are you finding the writing process? Do you love it? Like, what did you ever have any interest in writing before? Like, what's it been like for you?
Yeah. Well, first, I've always been an avid reader. And that started for me when I was really young because my mom would take us to the library. I was lucky because I have a mom who loves to read. And the library really felt like this gift shop, because you could go in and my mom would leave us at the children's section and she would say, okay, you can get anything you want. And I think we could get like 5 books. Like that's what the library let you take out. And I remember having my library card and filling out my book and really feeling like it was this place of treasures, where I could find anything that I wanted and escape into this world. And so I think I've always been I'm an avid reader. I've always been writing stories. My life took a different turn because of my voice and my ambitions and wanting to do this other world. But I started creating these characters after my daughter was born. I started to write stories, and I started to write children's stories surrounding these characters. And then I kept writing, and I showed my work to a couple publishers in the beginning, and they gave me some incredible advice. And I really listened to them, and I followed that advice, and I kept writing. And then, I started my journey with Hamilton, and I had a lot of young people that were reaching out to me and expressing to me feelings of loneliness and feelings of not having a place to belong. And so I said, well, if you don't have a place to belong, you can just belong with my Fearless Squad. And I put it out there, and I started this social movement where kids could feel like they didn't have to be alone. And it was a very positive place. I made up squad rules, but I felt like I wanted to create stories for these young people. And so I went back to those characters that I started with about 10 years ago. And I just started to write. And then I went to a reading at Books of Wonder, and I met my literary agent there. And it was just by chance. And I said, would you like to read this? And she said, yes. And it was really that thing of putting yourself out there and trying, and why not? And then I was lucky because she said yes. And then Simon & Schuster said yes. And then it was like, oh God, like I really have to do this. But I think that it has been it's just been so much fun. And it was really great because I finished most of it. The last part of it had to be done during 2020, the last editing part of it, but most of it was done by the time the pandemic hit. So most of it was written at the theater, and that I was surrounded by inspiration, which was really cool,
That's amazing. I have a total favor question to ask, and you can completely and 100% say no. But
I can totally get your Hamilton tickets. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I don't have Hamilton tickets. I've seen Hamilton multiple times. But my daughter, I have 4 kids, and my oldest daughter, who's just about 14, is obsessed with Hamilton. Is there any way you could sing just like a line or two for her? Her name, you don't even have to say her name, but is there any way you would like? Well, I can't put this in the episode now.
Oh, got it. Okay. A lot of things that I say are, I tell young people to keep the faith right now, to be fearless, and to know that everything is possible. And whenever you feel like things are too much, just look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now, and work, because you got this.
Yay.
So,
thank you
for that. Piece.
That's amazing. You just made me the coolest mom ever for her. Thank you.
How old are your girls or boys?
I have twins who are about to be 14 next week, and then a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I've been following you on Moms Don't Have Time to Work Out. And I have to say that you've been such an inspiration to me, because right now I'm getting ready to go back, on the boards and to go back on Broadway. And I have, definitely gained those COVID pounds. And your Instagram has really been great and given me a little boost. So thanks for doing that.
Because I literally am thinking I should just shut that account down.
Oh my God, please don't. I feel
like such a sham because I'm such a bad example. For a while, I really feel like we had a movement going and everyone was losing weight together and it had a purpose. And then I gave up, and now I just feel so ashamed of myself and embarrassed by the whole thing. So,
Zibby, don't give up. But if you need somebody to I'll go on and be like, hey, I love it. And, I'll give you a shout to reboost, but I really love it. So don't give up, because sometimes I do feel like that. Because my daughter just started school 3 weeks ago, and once I drop her off, I'm like, do I really want to go work out, or do I just want to go drink coffee and, answer emails and do that? But when I look at your Instagram, I'm like, all right, because you say the same thing. You're like, if you can just take a walk today, if you can just do that, and it's inspiring. So don't give up.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Parting advice for aspiring authors, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be afraid to tell your story as well, because there are parts of your story that you can feel like don't belong or don't make you a part of the world that you think like it should be. But your story is really your superpower and what makes you unique and what is going to make whatever story you're writing yours and yours alone. So don't be afraid to go to those places that make you who you are, because you won't regret it. It's a lot of fun once a couple of those secrets are out there.
Oh. Well, this was amazing. I can't wait to see you perform. Where are you going to next be on stage, by the way? Where can we all...
I will be back at Hamilton.
Well, okay,
so
all right.
I'll be back at Hamilton in August. I am part of the new Hulu series, Only Murders in the Building, that's coming out. I think it starts in August. And so you can watch me on there. I won't tell you who I'm playing, but it's a lot of fun.
Okay.
And I had a blast, but that is a new show that stars Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, and it's hilarious. Oh. So I had a really good time filming that during this pandemic.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Thank you, Mandy. This was so much fun. And I just had a blast. So thank you for everything.
Thank you, Zibby. And I hope to meet one day in person.
Yes, that'd be great. Okay.
All right. See you on Instagram.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.